Yes, would you ask Ms. Wray to come back in, please? Thank you. All right, Mrs. Wray, ready to carry on?
Yes.
Well done. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Millett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Ms. Wray, I just want to follow up on one or two exchanges we had during the morning session today. The first is where you and I discussed fire specialist consultants in the email that we saw that you'd sent to Judith Blakeman, you'll recall. And you'd said that you hadn't consulted senior consultants from specialist fire engineering companies, but Exova were engaged to work as part of the project team. You'll recall that exchange.
Yes. Can
I just show you one or two documents? Can I look, please, with you at CST 402141? Now, this is an email from you to Carl Stokes.
Yep.
And it appears that you are sending him what you call another copy of the Exova fire strategy and floor plans, which you raised in the FFRA action plan. Are these plans now sufficient? And that's an email dated 23rd of May 2016, so it follows on from his April 2016 FRA. Let's look at the document that you attach. It's CST 402142. And you can see from that first page that it's an outline fire safety strategy for Grenfell Tower dated the 7th of November 2013, issue number 3.
Yep.
So, first of all, do you accept that this document was in your hands as at May 2016?
Yes, it must have been.
It must have been, yes. Did you read it when you received it from Claire Williams?
I honestly don't know. I would normally read things which are sent to me, but I honestly don't know.
Yes. Well, let's see how we go. Page 8, please. On page 8, you can see that there is a paragraph dealing with compartmentation towards the bottom of the screen, 3.13, fire resistance of elements of structure. And then if you go to page 9, you can see 3.14, compliance with B4 external fire spread. I just want to focus on this with you. Exova say, it is considered that the proposed changes will have no adverse effect on the building in relation to external fire spread, but this will be confirmed by an analysis in a future issue of this report.
Right.
Now, you could see, well, first of all, did you read that? Do you remember reading that particular paragraph?
I don't remember reading it, but I can't say that I did or I didn't, sorry.
Would you agree that this report leaves the question of compliance with B4 open as at the date of the report, November 2013?
It seems to, yes.
Yes. Do you agree that that would be relevant to whether a stay-put policy would be appropriate for Grenfell Tower?
Yeah, well, I presume so.
Yes. Did it occur to you to ask Claire Williams or anybody else whether in May 2016 an analysis and a future issue of that report had been received from Exova?
I don't recall that it did. I believe, as you alluded to, that this was in reference to the April FRA and the actions arising from it. And I think my policy in terms of anything that was relatively complex that Carl had requested, I let him make a judgment of whether that complied with his request for documentation. So I would have passed it to him, and I don't know if he'd come back to me, then I would have chased it up, but I'm not sure that I would have taken it on board.
I see. So does that tell us that although this report left open the question of compliance with B4 external fire spread as at November 2013, you didn't notice or didn't ask the question, has a future issue of this report yet come in the 3 odd years or 2.5 years
I didn't.
since.
I think this was the first time that I'd ever received this.
Right.
The works are nearing completion. I hadn't seen it before, so I passed it on to Carl to make an assessment if this is what he required. And if this was what he required, I may not have done anything further. I can't recall.
Do you recall whether, we've seen no document on this, but do you recall whether he came back to you and said, this is a very interesting report, is there a future issue of the report as promised, because this is now some 3 years out of date?
I don't remember, I'm sorry. I would have, if he had, then I would have gone back to Claire to point out exactly what he was saying. I mean, I think I would have read it, but depending on what other things were going on, I may not have focused the degree of attention that you would want to.
Can I ask you to look at your first witness statement, please?
Yeah, of course.
And go to page 8. If you go to paragraph 39, you say there, I learnt after the incident that the project team were working with Exover Warrington Fire, who were tasked with producing a specific Grenfell Tower fire strategy in the context of the refurbishment.
Yeah.
Just pausing there, looking at the email I've just shown you, the 23rd of May 2016, it's not correct, is it, to say that you only learnt after the incident that the project team were working with Exover?
Yeah, it clearly isn't. I'd obviously forgotten having had sight of it in May 16.
Right. Can you explain how you thought or came to think that you only discovered that the project team were working with Exover after the incident?
I can't explain other than I knew I'd had no input into it. I certainly didn't receive anything prior to that stage, and the project was effectively almost finished at that point. So I didn't have any input or access to the information at a point in time where I could have influenced it.
And, right. And do I take it that you, when you made this statement, simply did not recall the email I've just shown you?
No, I genuinely didn't, and I thought it was after the incident, but clearly that I was wrong.
And presumably nobody showed you that email, just to be clear.
No, I don't think they did.
Right. Now, when we left off, we were talking about door closers, and you'd made the point, and I will probably mis-summarise it, but you'd made the point that you considered that the LFB were after 100% compliance. Is that a fair way of summarising?
I think that's what they were trying to get us as the landlord to achieve.
Right.
And to be fair, some fire officers felt more evangelical about it than others.
Evangelical?
Well, that,
all right.
Perhaps that's not a great term, but we're more inclined to be pushing for 100% than some others.
Yes, I understand. Now, can we look at CST 407904, please? CST 407904. This is an email exchange from August 2016, and I'd like to start on page 2. CST 409704, yes. And if we go to page... what's been put up is 7094. Yes, what I want is 9704, please. That's what I said. Yeah. Now, if we go to page 2, we can see that at the top of that page, the context of this is Lonsdale House, but at the top of this page, you can see, perhaps we ought to go to the very bottom of page 1. I think the heading has become separated from the text. You can see that you sent an email on the 1st of August 2016 to James Swindles. Now, do you remember who he was?
He's not somebody I dealt with a great deal, but it clearly is a fire safety inspecting officer.
A fire safety inspecting officer at the LFB. Yes. Now let's go over to page 2, and you say there, thank you for your email. My colleague advises that it's your intention to issue a deficiency notice in relation to this block. It would be helpful if you could confirm the flat numbers of the front doors you consider may not be nominally fire rated so we can investigate further. On the issue of fire action notices, I did discuss this with Rebecca Burton at our recent meeting, and she advised that she would raise this with you. We discussed the possibility of us writing to all the residents at the block to outline the fire procedure as an alternative to putting up notices. Can you please advise if you have discussed this with Rebecca? With regard to the doors, and this is the key paragraph, I would highlight that the majority of the tenanted doors in this block were replaced with fully compliant, self-closing FD30 door sets in 2012 to 13 as part of a larger door replacement programme. And clearly, at the time of installation, the doors were fitted with operational self-closing devices. Just note in passing the absence of the S there. I will investigate the time frame you've requested regarding reinstating any self-closers which have been disabled or removed, but I would emphasise we cannot control the action of residents. It is possible that once reinstated, you or one of your colleagues could return to this block and find that a number of tenants have again removed or disabled their self-closer. Now, you've set out the nature of the problem there. Let's see what Mr. Swindles returns to you with. Can we go to page 1? He comes back and he says, same day, hi, Janice, thanks for getting back to me with regards to this. And then in the third main paragraph down, he says, third main paragraph down, that's right. He says, although at the time of installation in 2012 to 13, these doors may have been compliant, Article 11 of the RRO places an onus on the responsible person to monitor fire safety systems in place, and Article 17 requires you to maintain fire safety systems. I understand that residents may cause problems, but if you put a system in place to monitor and maintain, and the doors and the residents are not cooperative, you have shown due diligence, and the residents then become responsible under 5 Roman 3 and Article 22 with regards to cooperation and communication. It might be appropriate to remind residents of this and the fact that the self-closer on their own front door is not for their protection, but for their neighbours. Now, do you remember that exchange?
Not especially.
No, clearly. But do you accept that exchange, as a result of that exchange, the NFB was not being, as you might put it, evangelical, but was simply pointing out to you that you don't have to ensure 24/7 that every single door closer in your estate is working, but simply that you've put in place a reasonable system to monitor and maintain the door closers?
Yep, I think the point I was trying to make is that there was inconsistency in some of the fire safety officers that we were dealing with. Jim Swindles has made his position very clear, and that's completely what it should be. We'd had other dialogue with other individuals who felt that they were taking a different stance. That was the point I was making.
Right, but in that context, did you ever go to those individuals whom you might describe as evangelicals, point to this email and say, well, look, this is what I've been advised by Mr. Swindles, what's wrong with that?
I can't recall if I did that or not.
Let's, in light of that, let's look a little earlier in the chronology at Rebecca Burton's involvement. LFB 30084098, and this is Rebecca Burton's second witness statement to the inquiry. Can we go in that, please, to page 9, paragraph 16? Now, we were... yes, and in paragraph 16, she refers to a meeting on the 13th of November 2015 with you, as you can see. And if you turn to page 10, paragraph 17, she says, the issues outlined above were discussed formally in the meeting on 5th January 2016. After that, I did not ask for the matters to be listed again as specific agenda items for the bi-monthly meetings, as I did not feel it necessary to do so. Rather, in my mind, they would have been followed up under the standard recurring items of enforcement deficiency notices. Now, that meeting was the bi-monthly meeting of the 5th of January 2016. Let's go to the minutes of that. But before I do, can I just ask you, do you remember the contents of that meeting at all? We looked at the minute yesterday on a different topic.
Okay. We'll obviously have spent a fair bit of time talking about the Adair fire because of the date, but I wouldn't necessarily remember what else but usually the minutes were a relatively good reflection of what we did discuss.
Let's go to the minutes. LFB 30032330. And let's go straight into page 3. We've already seen the first page of this. on an earlier topic. Page 3.7 deals with flat entrance doors. Let's look at that. It says this. Rebecca advised that the LFB requirement is for all flat entrance doors to be self-closing. Specifically, landlords must ensure that self-closing devices are fitted and, in caps, also that effective procedures are introduced to ensure that these devices remain operational and are not disconnected or removed by the resident. Further, Rebecca advised that carrying out checks on self-closers when properties became void would not in itself be considered by the LFB to be a sufficient level of checking. In relation to leaseholder doors, the LFB also expect the TMO to carry out regular checks. Were you surprised when Rebecca Burton indicated that the LFB expected the TMO to carry out regular checks on self-closing devices?
No.
No.
Because we'd had our meeting in November and that was one of the things that we'd discussed. And so I'd already started to escalate it to Barbara.
Indeed. And can we take it from that answer and the previous meeting and what you'd done that you didn't object at that meeting, that what she was asking you to do was impracticable or unreasonable?
No, I didn't think it was impractical, and that wasn't stopping me trying to get it progressed. The point I was making is that there's sometimes inconsistency with the individuals we're dealing with.
Was there anything...
But Rebecca was not one of those individuals.
I see. So we've now got two. We've got James Swindles, who's not an evangelist, and Rebecca Burton, who's not an evangelist.
Fine.
Yes. You agree, yes?
Yes, I do
Right.
agree.
I was just trying to work out who these are. Do you recall why the LFB said that carrying out checks on self-closers only when properties became void would not be sufficient?
Well, as I think I said this morning, that their view would it would take too long to get full coverage in the stock.
Do you remember whether you discussed the type of effective procedures that would be required?
No, because actually the LFB's view, rightly so, that it was for us to figure out how we did it. They didn't mind the how, they just needed it to be done. Right.
Now, let's go to her first witness statement, please. This is LFB 3032331. Let's look together at page 4, paragraph 10. Page 4, paragraph 10. It's quite a long paragraph. If you go to the last 3 lines on the page, she's talking about the meeting of the 5th of January 2016, and she says, "We discussed ways in which the TMO could implement a new management process for maintaining self-closers and fire doors, which included incorporating a check with any annual checks already being carried out, such as electrical and gas safety checks." Now, do you remember that topic being discussed?
No, not especially, and I would have normally minuted and sent draft minutes to be commented on by those attending. So,
Right.
but it may well be. Perhaps
Right.
her memory's better than mine.
I see. I mean, you don't dispute her recollection of the fact that you could have a check incorporated as part of an electrical or gas safety check?
No, and I think we've already discussed that we had investigated, and I think investigated again, and the option of checking this at gas safety checks. Electrical inspections, I think, are 5 yearly, so that wouldn't have been appropriate. But yeah.
At this stage, and this is January 16, what had been done to look into the question of whether you could carry out a check on the self-closers at the same time as electrical and gas safety checks?
Well, as I say, electrical checks were 5 yearly, which I'm confident would not have been sufficiently frequent for the brigade. So that largely ruled those out. And gas safety checks, I don't know in terms of the time frame, but I think I have already said that we did investigate with our gas contractors. It may be that it probably is that we'd already investigated with the previous contractors. If they've changed contracts, we may well have investigated again, but really that was something that Alex Bosman would have led on, so I can't be clear about the time frame.
Do you accept that this is in essence, the same advice that you'd already been given by Andy Jack at the 8th of November 2012 meeting, some 3 and a bit years before?
Yeah.
Did you agree at the meeting about what procedures the TMO would put in place to inspect and maintain self-closing devices, or even discuss that?
I wouldn't have been in a position to agree. I would have had to go back and investigate with technical colleagues and escalate it to people who have access to contractors, etc. Perhaps a range of solutions that I wouldn't have thought of.
And did you go back and investigate with technical colleagues had escalated in the way you've just described?
Yes. And that led to Barbara talking to Laura Johnson at the council in terms of a programme to install self-closers, but also an ongoing monitoring. So yeah, that's where that led to, but it being escalated to that level, and at that level, that was the decision, the way that they thought it should be taken forward. And by then, on at least one occasion, the gas contractors weren't happy to take on board the work.
So does this tell us that despite the advice or instruction or whatever you might call it, given by Andy Jack at the 8th of November 2012 meeting, the position remained pretty much the same? Nothing had changed by the time of the 5th of January 2016 meeting that you had with Rebecca Burton in respect of the monitoring and maintenance system for self-closing devices?
I don't think it had, no.
And why was that?
I don't know that I can add much to what I've already said in that we were always looking for ways that we could do it, looking for ways that we could ensure that we had access to do it, but we did fundamentally have a resource issue. You can call it bodies, you can call it staff, you can call it finances, but I was unable to persuade people with budgets that this should be what they spent their money on, because they had new heating systems and new roofs and other things which were equally important.
Yes. Did you ask Carl Stokes about the LFB's views as expressed by Rebecca Burton at this meeting on this topic?
He wouldn't have been at our meetings. I didn't invite him to the liaison meetings.
No, but did you ask for his advice separately as to, for example, what procedures should be put in place in light of Rebecca Burton's view?
It's likely that I certainly will have passed on her view. It's likely that I did ask for his input.
What did he say?
I can't remember at this stage. I mean, it was for us to find a way of doing it. That was my view very, very clearly. So I would have had to try and find a way of doing it.
Yes.
I'm not sure that Carl would have been able to advise in terms of our internal processes what he would recommend.
No. Now, before I come to his April 2016 FRA, let me just ask you, we've seen the Swindles Ray correspondence of early August 2016, which is a little bit later in time than this discussion. But at any time before that, did you yourself consider enforcing the provision in the tenancy agreements with tenants that they should let you in if you wanted to inspect their door closers?
Yes, and actually, we investigated that pretty thoroughly in terms of the Dare Tower, because the enforcement notice required us to ensure that all of the doors, regardless of tenure, were self-closing. So we anticipated that there might be an issue. So we worked with the council's internal legal team to agree a procedure whereby we could clearly evidence how many attempts we had made to gain access. There was a sort of series of letters and phone calls. There's a whole access procedure that we agreed, some of which we did and then passed to the contractor, but the records had to be quite rigorous. So we had that in place, and ultimately, as part of the discussions that Barbara had with Laura, that it was agreed that access procedure would be used. So we were looking at that and agreeing that.
When was that? When was that agreement that the access procedure would be used?
Well, that's my understanding anyway. It was part of the discussions that Barbara and Laura had, whenever that was, February, March, something like that.
February, March, what, 2016?
No, 2017, wasn't
Yes.
it, by the time they agreed them?
Right.
But the access procedures were agreed to ensure that we had access to all of the dwellings at Adair and Hazelwood Tower. So the access procedures must have been prepared in about March, perhaps 16. I can't remember the date, but they were there should we need them.
Can you account for the fact that it took you until early 2017, on your evidence just now, to come to a process whereby you could enforce your access rights in order to carry out inspections?
I can't. We have an access process in relation to that specific piece of work at those two blocks, and I think in the end I don't think we had to use it on many occasions. I think we were able to facilitate access, and it had been escalated, and Barbara may be able to advise.
Now, in the April 2016 FRA, let's just look at that, CST 403161, Mr. Stokes includes detail for the first time about what the TMO's policy is on self-closers. And I think we see that at page 21. If we go to page 21 and look at the lower half of the page, it's a long block of text and they're quite difficult to navigate. But if you bear with me, you can see that about halfway down, you can see that there's a list of numbers. Mm-hmm. The original flat entrance doors in this building are flat numbers, and then there's a list. And then it says this: it is TMA's policy that if flats are refurbished or when new tenants move into a flat, then the self-closing device fitted to the flat entrance door is accessed. If the self-closing device does not close the door fully or one is not fitted to the door, then a new appropriate self-closing device is fitted. Some of the original flat entrance doors have more than one lock fitted to them. It is assumed that the occupants of these flats can exit the flat in an emergency without any undue delay. Now, do you know what it was that prompted Mr. Stokes to include this in his FRA?
No. Well, presumably it was the enforcement notices, but I can't say for sure.
The enforcement notices for Adair and Hazelwood?
Yes.
Now, it appears to be the policy that Rebecca Burton had explained in the 5th of January 2016 was not acceptable to the LFB. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
When you saw this, were you not surprised that Mr. Stokes had thought it appropriate to include in this a policy which was contrary to what you'd been told by the LFB?
I didn't pick this up.
You didn't pick it up?
No, I don't think I did.
Can you explain why not?
No, I can't. Just the sheer volume of things that I'm reading, I didn't pick it up.
Right. Can we then look on in the year? Now it's September 2016. TMO 00840753. This is the minute of the meeting for the 13th of September 2016 Health and Safety Committee meeting. We've seen this document, I think, at least twice now. Mm-hmm. We come back to it on this topic. You can see, if you go to page 5, paragraph 6.1, under the heading Review of the Safety Policy and Strategy, we've looked, I think, at the first 2 bullet points before in relation to those respective topics. Now we look at the 5th bullet point down, self-closers. And it says this: self-closers. The need to have a more proactive policy on installation of these devices in order to meet the LFB requirements was acknowledged. Suggestion that this could be included in cyclical decorations projects was discussed, but further work required on this in TMO and with RBKC. Self-closers, next bullet, regular inspection and maintenance. How and when can this be undertaken? Do you, apart from that minute, do you have a recollection of the requirements relating to maintenance of self-closers which had been laid down by the LFB being discussed at that meeting?
I think we had quite a wide-ranging discussion. The reference to cyclical projects was, I think, Peter Madison suggesting that it may be something that we... The difficulty is that we're it looks like we're still looking at plugging it into something else as opposed to having a dedicated inspection program.
Yes. Was this the first time that the regular inspection and maintenance requirement for self-closers was raised with the Health and Safety Committee?
I doubt it, but...
right.
Yeah, I don't see how it could have been, because we would have had at least 1 or 2 meetings in the intervening time, and both Barbara and I were well aware of what the fire brigade were asking. We all had a copy of the enforcement notice, so I can't see that would be the case.
Do you know why this was only raised with the Health and Safety Committee at this time and not immediately after the meeting with the LFB on the 5th of January?
Well, no, I would have expected that's when it would have been discussed.
In the last part of the bullet point that starts at self-closers, the need to have a more proactive policy, you can see that it says further work required on this in TMO and with RBKC. What further work was required? Funding.
It'll be about the funding aspect because it's new work, and it'll be about budgets.
Further work required on this. That's about money, is it? It's
about money, and sorry to interrupt. And also it's possibly a policy issue, which I think is what it ended up being, a discussion on policy.
And what was the discussion on policy about?
Well, I can only tell you what Barbara fed back to me, but so Barbara raised it at their joint management team, and we made a proposal that it be a 3-year programme and of installation, and RBKC wanted it to be 5-year, and they didn't accept that there should be an ongoing programme of inspection.
Now, I think you've drafted a paper for this meeting on the topic. Can we go to TMO 00840660, please? This is a document called Paper 6, Review of Fire Safety Strategy for Discussion.
Yeah.
See that?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure. We have seen this before
We have.
because we looked at it before. But can you look, please, in that document with me at page 2, and you can see that there's a reference halfway down the page to self-closers. You see that?
Yes.
And in the second last bullet point, self-closers, inspection and maintenance of fitted self-closers. And you say, LFB advised that the RRO requires regular inspection / maintenance of these devices to ensure that are still operating effectively and have not been disconnected / disabled. The LFB have advised that landlords must not, in caps, must not rely exclusively on void checks to undertake these inspections. How can this be progressed? Is this something that ESAs can assist with? Are there any PPM contractors, such as gas servicing contractors, who could assist? Could it be included in the tenancy checks? Could RD be forced to feed back after visiting a property? How else can this be progressed? Additionally, the possibility of regular publicity, either general to all via link or website, etc., or targeted with personalised letters to specific blocks to promote the need to ensure that self-closers are not disconnected, should be considered. Now, those questions that you set out there were set out in this paper for the September meeting. Why were these questions not set out in any earlier paper for any earlier meeting? And the matter was left for 9 months.
I've already said I would have expected this would have gone to an earlier meeting, and I can't give you an explanation because we were well aware that that's what the requirement was. I can only think that at that time we were pretty consumed with making sure that Adair and Hazelwood, the enforcement notices, were complied with, and that was a significant amount of work on my behalf. So I can't give you an explanation. I'm sorry. I would have intended it to be set out earlier. This is a discussion paper, as you know, for all the things that we need to be reviewing and considering for the revised strategy statement. So I'm just putting down questions to enable, promote some debate and get people to think outside the box or give me their views.
You see, we've seen no evidence, either in people's statements or in any documents, that this point and a series of questions that you're raising in this paper in September 2016 had been raised at all between the 5th of January 2016 meeting with Rebecca Burton and September 2016. We've seen no evidence of that. Can you explain that?
No, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. It absolutely was on my radar and also Barbara's. We were very clear. You know that I met with Rebecca in November and in January, so it would have been my intention to raise it. And I can't give you an explanation because I don't have one.
Now, let's go on into October 2016, TMO 00840697. And if we go to the bottom of page 1, you could see in the last 2/3 of the screen is an email from you to Ian Lines of the 6th of October 2016. Now, Ian Lines, as you can see from the next email up, is was head of strategic investment at the TMO, wasn't he?
Yes.
And if you look at the very foot of page 1, you can see that you say to him, our policy at the time of the Adair fire, which we had shared with the LFB, had been that where new flat doors are fitted, these would be self-closing FD30S with intumescent strips and cold smoke seals and be fully compliant with building regs. In addition, we would retrofit self-closers to the flat entrance doors of void properties and to doors in locations where our fire risk assessor highlighted the need for these to be installed. Finally, several years ago, we completed a programme of flat entrance door set replacement of approximately 1,200 tenanted properties. These doors had been highlighted as potentially non-compliant by the FRA and then surveyed by stock condition surveyors to clarify whether they were sufficiently fire resisting, and those that were not were included in the programme. The LFB, go on over the page, had audited Adair Tower several weeks prior to the fire, there, and it issued a deficiency notice which had highlighted the need to ensure all flat doors in this block were self-closing. I've spoken at length with the LFB's fire safety team leader, and her view is that all of our flat entrance doors should be self-closing, and that with our existing policy it would take too long for all of our flat doors to comply. I consulted peers at similar organisations, and in general they confirmed that their policy was to ensure all flat entrance doors were self-closing. Therefore, it is likely, possible going forward, that every time one of our blocks is audited by the LFB, they will raise this as a requirement and issue a notice of safety deficiencies. Unfortunately, the LFB interpretation of the regulatory reform order goes further than this, and they're requiring landlords to have procedures in place whereby self-closers are inspected and those which are faulty or have been disabled or removed are replaced. Whilst the LFB state that it is up to the landlord to set the frequency and arrangements for the inspection of self-closers, they have confirmed that the waiting for the property to become void would not be considered sufficient. They recently audited Lonsdale House, where the tenant's door sets were replaced in 2013 as part of the programme referred to above, and the inspecting officer has stated that he wants us to ensure all doors are self-closing. I pointed out that they had been relatively recently replaced with fully compliant door sets, and we were unable to control any resident who wished to disable the door closer. He still sees this as our responsibility and believes this is the correct interpretation of the RRO. It is also worth pointing out that Laura Johnson at RBKC is not keen on the idea of a borough-wide programme of fitting self-closers to all doors. However, in discussion at the recent Health and Safety Committee, there was a general consensus that we needed to be more proactive about fitting these, and the possibility of including this in the cyclical DARES programme, complete in 7 years, query, appeared to be the most effective way of proceeding, ? Now, I don't apologise for reading that email in its entirety, because it's an important document and there's a lot in it, but question, by this time, this is early October 2016, is it right that you and those on the Health and Safety Committee were well aware that the TMO's policy of only fitting self-closing devices on doors where the property became void did not meet the required standard under the statute?
Absolutely.
Yes. Why did you think that the LFB's interpretation of the RRO goes further than this, and they're requiring landlords to have procedures in place whereby self-closers are inspected and those which are faulty or have been disabled or removed are replaced, which is your fourth bullet point on page 2.
Okay. Ian Lines is relatively new, doesn't know any of the history. He has an overview of things like, I've misspelt it, but it was the Cyclical Decorations Programme, Cyclical Decks Programme. I believe that I've been asked to contact him to see whether what Peter Maddison suggested at the Health and Safety Committee in terms of Cyclical Decorations Programme, having this as an additional item, is an effective way of going forward. So I was trying to give him all of the history and all of the dialogue so that he could investigate further.
No, but my question was,
Sorry.
let me try the question in a different way. In what way did the LFB's requirement, did you think, to have landlords inspect self-closing devices and replace faulty ones go beyond what the TMO was required to do under the RRO?
I didn't think it did. I was just trying to explain to him that it's not, I'm not just looking at installing, we are also looking at an inspection programme. Clearly I didn't set it out very well. So it's an installation programme and an inspection programme, and we need to figure out how we're going to be able to do them. And he had been tasked with looking at whether there was a way that we hadn't considered, or whether the Cyclical Decks programme might be a vehicle for moving this forward.
Ah, I see. I think I understand your answer. Are you saying in that bullet point that the LFB's interpretation of the regulatory reform order, so far as inspection regimes are concerned, goes beyond that order because there's nothing in it about inspection? It's probably just a bad form of words. I'm just trying to say there are these two issues. I'm mentioning the regulatory reform order, which he possibly knows about, but if not, he'll need to in order to investigate this further. It's a long email, and I probably didn't word it terribly well in places. And do you accept that if the TMO were not inspecting, I think you do accept, that if they weren't inspecting self-closing devices other than whenever voids came up, which was still the policy, then the TMO was not complying with Article 17 of the RRO?
Agreed, which is why I'm trying to move it forward, and I'm trying to do what the subcommittee or the Health and Safety Committee has asked me to do. And Peter Maddison particularly had raised this as a possibility, so I'm trying to exhaust that. My personal view is I don't think that that's going to end up being a goer, but I've been told to investigate, so I'm trying to investigate.
Yes. And would you accept that when, according to your text in that bullet point, you are referring to what it is the LFB are after, that what the LFB were after was consistent with the LGA guide, which required, as good practice, inspecting timber fire-resisting doors on a 6-monthly basis as part of a programme
Yes.
of planned preventative maintenance? Yes. Etc. And that
Yes.
also covers the devices. Right. Then move on in time to December 2016, and I just want to ask you about the change in policy and the proposal for that. Can we go to TMO 00843-892? And I'd like to show you this board update, December 2016. Did you draft this?
It looks like I might have done. Does it say?
It doesn't say on the first page, nor on the last page, so that's why I'm asking you. Does it look familiar to you?
Could you spin down? Because I'll know just...
Yes, certainly.
Sorry.
Let's scroll down to the bottom of page 1, and then page 2. We're going to look at page 2.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will have done.
Very good. Let's look at item 6, LFB deficiency notice received. And this is December 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And at the bottom of paragraph 6, it says, the tenant's doors at this block, and you can see that there are a number of blocks there referred to.
These blocks, I should have said, sorry.
Well, I was going to ask you that, which one you were referring to, but I think that's all of them. The tenant's doors at this block, which should be read as these blocks, were replaced with fully fire-rated, self-closing, compliant door sets within the last 4 years, and so we are surprised to have received this notice and require a clear steer from the LFB on their specific additional requirements. Now,
Sorry, what was the date of this document?
well, that's what I was going to ask you. It says December 2016 on the top of page 1. Are you able to date it any more accurately than that?
Sorry, could we scroll up, because I might be able to tell.
Yes,
where
of
it
course.
is.
I'm so sorry. Quite right. Page 1.
That's fine. It's because extended timescales.
It might help you at the second half of the first paragraph. There's a reference to the
It must have been December.
post-notice.
Sorry, it must have been December, because it refers to the inspection at Hazelwood, which was the post-notice inspection.
Yes,
on the
well, it
15th.
says board update deck 16 at the very top.
Yeah.
Right. Now, well, let's look on. Let's look at LFB 3032333. This is the minute of the next bi-monthly meeting with the LFB, which you can see took place on the 18th of January 2017. And I was just wondering, I must ask you, was the document we've just been looking at, marked December 2016, drafted for or produced at that meeting?
No, it's a board update, so I think it must have gone to TMO board.
Yes, of course, it is a board update. And in fact, that the next board meeting we have was on the 10th of January 2017.
Okay.
Do you think it was
Perhaps.
drafted for that meeting?
Perhaps, I can't.
You don't know.
Sorry,
Right.
I don't know.
But anyway, let's look at the minute of the bi-monthly, which is on the screen in front of you. 18th of January 2017, you are there, Rebecca Burton is there. If we look at page 3, please, you can see item 7, enforcement action, deficiency notices and correspondence with the LFB. And then in the second paragraph, you can see that you raise a query with why 9 Colville Square had received a deficiency notice. You see that?
Yes.
And you can see, as I think we've already heard, that the Rebecca Burton gives a pretty clear indication as to what was required. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Did you consider that her comments, as set out there, gave the TMO the clarity that it needed, or felt it needed?
Yes.
That wasn't the first time, though, surely, that clarity had been received. What was it that she was telling you that you didn't already know?
So this is regarding the deficiency notice at Colville Square, yes?
Yes.
So there was a deficiency notice, and it had a broadly compliant, and to all intents and purposes, it didn't appear to have changed. So I think it was legitimate to just find out why it had moved from one to the other. and it appeared that must have gone off my radar that there were some issues raised previously or identified at the previous time when we were given broadly compliant, but I just didn't have any recollection of them. So that's fair enough. And what she was saying is with that and something additional, then it brought it into the deficiency notice territory.
Right. In relation to Grenfell, the only thing you can see is on page 4, and the only thing discussed there is the presence of a mobility scooter in the communal area, which I think is something that had been picked up by Carl Stokes.
Yes.
There wasn't any reference there to the self-closers in that building. Is that because no clarification was required?
Yeah, we'd had the notice, so yeah, it was just if we had queries or if we were unclear. Sometimes it's very general and it's unclear whether they're talking about all doors or just communal doors, or sometimes it's just helpful to clarify.
Now, at some point between January and March 2017, let me show you a document. TMO 00840769. This is a document called Fire Safety Board Update for March 2017.
Okay.
Could you just help me? When did you start doing these Fire Safety Board updates?
I've wondered that actually. I suspect, but I don't know for sure, I haven't checked, that Robert had started to ask me to do them certainly at the time, at or just after the Adair fire. I mean, I used to regularly be asked for information, but it became a bit more comprehensive and a bit more wide-ranging in relation to fire safety at that time, I believe.
So he asked you to give board updates regularly, did he?
He asked for a regular fire safety board update. I think prior to that, he had a chief executive's report, and so sometimes there would be specific things he would want me to incorporate. But this was more sort of comprehensive.
I see, and that started after the Adair Tower fire.
I could be wrong, but that's what my recollection.
That's your recollection.
Yes.
Looking at this document, you can see on page 2. It starts on page 1, but there's a list of the recent deficiency notices. And if you look at page 2, paragraph 4, self-closing devices on entrance doors, and it says, the need to adopt a more proactive approach towards the retrofitting of self-closing devices on flat entrance doors throughout the housing stock was recognised as part of the thorough review of our fire policy and strategy. This is necessary to satisfy the LFB's requirements, as they've confirmed that they consider our previous policy would take too long to ensure 100% of tenanted doors are fitted with these devices. A change should also reduce the likelihood of further LFB deficiency notices being issued on the basis of absent self-closers. The TMO is therefore currently in discussion with RBKC about the possibility of introducing a 3-year programme to install self-closing devices across the stock. There's no mention there, as far as I can see, that there should have been a regime in place for inspection and maintenance of the self-closing devices, is there?
No, that was an oversight.
I was going to ask you why that. You said it's an oversight.
Yeah, it wasn't a deliberate policy. I think I was sometimes mindful of how much information I was putting in these reports. But yeah, it should have been there. It wasn't deliberately excluded. It was just...
Can you explain why it wasn't?
I can't explain. I know it was being discussed. Barbara and I were discussing it, and I knew that she was raising it with JMT, and I'd been asked, I think, probably by that stage to go to repairs and get some, an indication of prices, and things were going on. I don't know why it isn't there. What I would say is if it's a board update, then Barbara would have been at board, and she'd have been able to pick up on anything that I'd inadvertently omitted even.
Right. Now, there's then a meeting of the Health and Safety Committee on the 16th of March 2017, and the reference for that is at TMO 00847305. And that's actually your third witness statement. At page 19, paragraph 62, you refer to that meeting. Now, you drafted a paper for that meeting at RBK 50988. Let's look at that. And this is a document dated 1st of March 2017. installation of self-closing devices on flat entrance doors for discussion. Am I right in thinking that that document was drafted for discussion at the Health and Safety Committee meeting on the 16th of March?
Actually, I don't know if it was. It was. I think it was drafted for JMT, the Joint Management Team meeting, because that's where they were going to have a discussion about the policy and the budget.
I see. So there'd been that's a prior meeting, is it? The Joint Management Team?
Yes, it says JMT the 1st of March, so I think it must have gone there. I don't know if it went on to Health and Safety Committee or whether we just gave Barbara gave some verbal feedback.
All
I'm
right.
not sure.
Now, was the purpose of this paper, in part at least, to assist the JMT in making a decision about whether the TMO should have a system of monitoring and maintenance of the self-closing devices across the stop?
I believe so, yes.
If you look at the third paragraph on the first page, under paragraph 2, it says fire safety requirements for flat entrance doors, and in it, if you look at the third paragraph, under that it says, we have emphasised our concern that even regular inspections and maintenance where access is readily available will not ensure that all devices remain operational, as we cannot control residents who either deliberately choose to disconnect or disengage or do not report defects to enable us to instigate any necessary repair. The inspecting officer's response to these concerns was as follows, etc. Was it your view, even at this time, 1st of March 2017, that you can't control residents who either deliberately choose to disconnect or disengage or do not report defects to us?
I think that's always the case.
Was that a routine experience?
Yes. Not necessarily with cell closers, but with a variety of things.
Well, was it a routine experience that residents chose to disconnect or disengage self-closing devices?
I don't know. It did happen. But I think, I'm sure Laura, as a housing professional, she'd been aware that there's always the possibility that it's going to happen. So we may as well consider it now and think, do we need to put anything additionally in place to supplement it? But I try to be balanced and give the brigade's response.
Well, you say you're trying to be balanced, and that may be a fair point, because if you look up the page, you can see that what you're doing is setting out in the 2 bullet points what the LFB are requiring.
Yes.
Namely, you need to be significantly more proactive about retrofitting and regular inspection and maintenance of all self-closing devices to ensure that they remain connected and functioning correctly. And then you record the fact that the LFB have confirmed their view that a self-closing device is a fire safety system, etc. And then you then say we've emphasised our concern, which is the countervailing argument, isn't it?
I don't think it's an argument. I think it was just. I think there's value in acknowledging it that we no matter what we do, we can't be sure we've done 100%. We're just flagging it up, and we've raised that with the brigade, and this is their response, so that she knows what their position is on that.
Yes, but as you say, it's a balanced view. But it's not a strong case for having a monitoring system, is it?
I don't think that's what I was being asked to put forward. I was being asked to provide information in relation to where we currently were at. And Barbara was presenting the paper and was more than capable of being persuasive and providing anything additional. I didn't think it was. I don't think that was what my remit was. Right.
While we're on this, can we look at page 2 of this document and look at section 4? At the foot of that page, you say, under the heading Self-Closing Policy of Other Social Housing Landlords, the TMO has contacted a number of similar organisations seeking information on their policy with regard to self-closing devices. All respondents to date include City West, Haringey, Notting Hill Housing, have confirmed that their policy is to ensure that all flat entrance doors are fitted with self-closers. However, approaches to inspection / maintenance of these devices are much less clear. What was much less clear about the inspection or maintenance policies of those social housing landlords?
So I probably mentioned it before. There was a London and South East housing
group,
fire safety group,
yeah,
and we would often contact each other if there was just a question, if we were doing some benchmarking, and so I contacted a number just to find out if there was something that we were missing, or is it a quick win in terms of how we could progress this. And I think, as I say here, they were all pretty proactive about installing self-closers. And when you asked them if they were regularly inspecting them, they would say yes. But when you asked for the detail, it was a bit similar to, well, voids and major works, and there wasn't, my recollection from the people who responded, there generally wasn't a dedicated inspection regime of the kind that we were trying to set up. So I was just trying to kind of give a flavour of
Yes, I see.
what's going on.
I see. Well, in case somebody asked you for a comparative.
Well, it's quite likely that's often the first thing that people say, well, what are other people doing?
Yeah.
Is there a clever or slicker way for us to do it? What is it?
Yes, I see. Now, on page 3 of this document, you can see that there's a table. It's not on your screen, but we need to scroll down to see it, which is the cost of installing and inspecting. And you can see that it has programme and cost. And the programme for installation, programme for total stock, has a cost of £619,000, and for inspection and maintenance programme, it has £288,000. First, did you prepare that table, or did somebody give it to you?
Somebody gave me the information and the breakdown, so I've slotted in what was provided to me. I think it was possibly Graham Webb, because I think we saw it as a responsive repair issue. So I think it was likely to have been him.
I see. And under the heading Inspection/Maintenance Programme, you indicate the assumptions behind the estimated cost of £288,000. There are three assumptions: 60% fully compliant, 20% repair adjusted, 20% replaced, and 10% no access. Were the doors that you were considering doors that had been replaced as part of the flat entrance door replacement programme?
We were considering all doors. This was just, I don't know why he decided on these figures, but they were just indicative costs, just to give Laura something to base that on.
Right. Do you know the basis of the figure of 20% doors required closer to be repaired or adjusted?
No, I don't even know whether it was just picked randomly out of the air in order to provide an indicative cost. I don't know, sorry.
Right. And the same applies to the other percentages, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Were you not concerned that that your assumptions, or the assumptions that you had received and were putting forward in turn, showed that 40% of doors did not have working self-closing devices?
No, I mean, they really were, I think, figures plucked out of the air in order to give an indicative cost. So I think we didn't know, we didn't have that figure.
Did you ask Graham Webb whether his assumptions were realistic or whether they were just fantasy?
I don't remember asking him.
I mean, is there any reason you could think of why Graham Webb would have put forward percentages that were not reasonably realistic?
No, but he had to start somewhere, and I suppose perhaps it's easier if you start thinking you've got more non-compliant, get a budget that you can handle, and then you can work within. I don't know, I'm speculating.
Yes,
so.
it may very well be a worst-case scenario, but did you have any reason to think that it was an unreasonable worst-case scenario, Miss Wray?
I didn't know.
No. So, therefore, even if a reasonable worst-case scenario, did it not give you concern that just under half of the doors in your stock had no operating self-closing devices?
No, because I don't know what that was based on, and I was more anxious to get the programme approved and on site and going forward than really to ponder the figures too much. I just wanted approval.
So you didn't apply your mind to the potential fire safety consequences of the facts indicated by the assumptions?
Well, they're not facts, are they? That's the point. He's giving an indicative cost based on something that, you have to start somewhere, don't you? You have to go back to the Director of Housing saying, this is on the basis of this is what it will cost. We don't know whether it's on that basis, but you need somewhere to start. And really, I don't know what more I can add, sorry.
No, I understand the point you're making entirely. It's a starting point, and it's based on assumptions. But did the fact that you were starting from just under half of the doors in the borough having either broken or no self-closers give you cause for concern?
No, because I think the purpose of the exercise was to get the budget agreed rather than to from my perspective, that's what I thought we were trying to achieve. Get the budget agreed, get on and do. In fact, if it were down to me, I probably would have made the fully compliant number less in order to give us a slush going forward. But it wasn't down to me.
Now, in your first witness statement, let's go to it, page 19, you say at paragraph 83 on that page, on 16th of March 2017, I produced a paper reviewing the fire strategy in respect of self-closers, which suggested that the TMO adopt a 5-year installation programme for retrofitting self-closing devices across our stock, JW25, and you give it the title. And that document is at TMO 00842281. And it's a paper, as you can see when it comes up, for the Health and Safety Committee.
Okay.
For its meeting on the 16th of March 2017, paper 5, for information. And if we go to page 2, we can see your name appears above the date 10th of March 2017.
Yeah.
So we're clear that you drafted it. If we go to item 3 on page 1, you can see that you set out there what is the JMT's decision, that the TMO would not be instigating a dedicated inspection or maintenance programme for self-closing devices. You see that?
Yes.
Yes. That was not what you'd recommended, was it?
No.
Can you explain why the JMT had set its face against your recommendation?
I wasn't at the meeting, but, well, the feedback I had received was that Laura wasn't convinced that it was being applied consistently across London. And I think I had the impression she would have been happier to implement it if she was confident that everybody was being treated equally and held to the same standards. But I don't know because I wasn't at the meeting.
You weren't at the meeting, and that's
No.
a fair point. But what you do is set out the reasons given for the decision. If we look at point 3, first paragraph, if we pick up the third line, it says, concern was expressed that the real value of such a programme in terms of improving resident safety is impossible to quantify. So it is difficult to justify committing limited resources to a programme which would then be ongoing indefinitely. Now, do I take it that you're setting out your understanding of the joint management team's reasoning?
Yes, I think that might have even been a direct quote from Laura. That's I was just passing on what I'd been advised.
Did you agree with the reasoning?
No.
Did you express your disagreement with the reasoning?
Most likely I did, but it would have been to no avail.
Do you remember, you said it was a direct quote. How was that decision conveyed to you? Did you see a document?
Sorry, I can't recall actually. It may have been from Barbara, or I may have seen sight of a document. I'm not too sure.
Right. When you say you most likely would have expressed your disagreement, do you remember?
I would have spoken to Barbara and said, I think this is the wrong decision. I think this is what we should be doing. And I appreciate Laura's got some reticence, but actually, if we don't do it now, then we're putting off the inevitable.
Do you remember what Barbara Matthews said to you in response?
No, I don't. I know that my view was that she was disappointed also to get our 3-year proposal moved to 5 years. And I think she, to be fair, she supported it and she wanted us to get on and do it.
You can see that in the next paragraph you go on to record this. Further, if the London Fire Brigade, LFB, were to make this a priority and look to introduce this as a London-wide standard that they will enforce against rather than on a borough-by-borough basis, we would take legal advice and make representations to the GLA in advance of instigating an inspection programme. Was it your view that the LFB were wrong to ask the TMO to have an inspection and maintenance policy?
No, and again, that is more or less a direct what was fed back to me from the meeting, so that is also not my view. No, they weren't wrong.
And was it your understanding that the LFB did not in fact have a London-wide standard for inspecting and maintaining self-closing devices?
I didn't know. I knew that from the correspondence with colleagues in the sector that it hadn't been something that was being raised with them on any kind of regular basis. Right. So generally the feedback I was getting was that it wasn't being applied consistently at sort of fire safety officer level necessarily, but I hadn't gone beyond a handful of.
No. No, and from your interactions with the LFB, and we've seen a number of them, did you ever get the sense that they were picking the TMO out for special treatment?
No, that wasn't my view. But Laura's sat on a fire safety group with London directors, so she'll have had different interactions that may have given her different information. I couldn't say.
At any rate, is it right, do I take it from this being blunt, that pushing your case or your belief about this any further would have been, as it were, above your pay grade?
It wouldn't have gone anywhere. Yeah, unfortunately.
Now, let's look at the minutes of the Health and Safety Committee meeting for the 16th of March 2017, for which this document was prepared. TMO 00847 we can see that you attended that meeting. The list of those present, third item down, yes?
Yes.
And if you go, please, to page 5 and look at paragraph 4.2, under the heading Review of Fire Safety, you can see it says BM, that's Barbara Matthews, advised that RBKC had been consulted and had confirmed their view that we adopt a 5-year installation programme for self-closers, but that at this stage we should not instigate an inspection programme. And then it goes on at 4.3, I should show you. PM suggested that any clarification from Council or RBKC Legal be incorporated in to the fire strategy to formalise TMA's position on where self-closers would be fitted and which doors would be inspected. Now, BM is obviously Barbara Matthews. What was the purpose of formalising the TMO's position in writing?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't think I did it.
Right. Did you understand that to require the fire safety strategy to be amended or amended further to include reference to the inspection and maintenance of self-closing devices?
I think Peter had a view that there were maybe locations across the stock where self-closers weren't fitted because of the way the doors were located. And we did have a number of street properties where the front entrance door would have been to the street and didn't lead to a communal area. So there were a small number, but actually I didn't think it was worth investigating any further because it was such a small number.
Right. And you can see from paragraph 4.3 that Mr. Madison suggests the clarification be incorporated into the fire strategy, and the action initial next to that sub-paragraph is yours, JW. Did you action it?
No.
Why is that?
Actually, I think usually the way this works is it's the initial against the individual paragraph. So I don't think we'd ever put anybody against that even.
Does that mean it wasn't to be actioned at all? That can't be right.
I think what I was going to do was get clarification of the small number of situations where self-closers wouldn't need to be fitted in the stock. I wasn't going to take legal advice or council's opinion because I think that wasn't really required. And I think I did do that.
Right. Well, let's look at the final version of the June 2017 Fire Safety Strategy agreed on the 13th of June 2017. It's at TMO 00847 We've seen it before. We'll come back to it now. Page 12, paragraph 18.1.1. And on page 12, you can see that in the last paragraph above 18.2, it says this: the TMO has a variety of ongoing methods of ensuring that self-closing devices remain in place and remain operational. These include, but are not confined to, included in works to all void/empty properties in advance of new tenant moving in, included in 6 monthly checks of all sheltered dwellings, included in monthly inspections of all temporary accommodation. When undertaking comprehensive FRA reviews, the assessor, access permitting, will inspect a number of flat entrance doors and their self-closing devices. Now, before June 2017, those were they not, the 4 points or actions that the TMO was already undertaking. That was the policy and had been for some time.
Yeah, but we hadn't got a permission to do regular comprehensive checks, so we weren't able to move it much forward at this stage. We tried, we'd identified the need, we'd escalated the LFB's view, but it didn't get approved.
Well, this policy I've just read to you, and these 4 parts of it, was precisely the policy that Rebecca Burton had indicated was insufficient back in January of the previous year.
Although we did get approval to do the installation, so at least we would be more confident about cascading that across the stock. What we didn't have was I think we hoped that we would be able to chip away at any resistance, but we wanted to expedite the installation programme and then keep on raising the need for the inspections, or look at other methods of, for example, the dialogue with Ian Lyons to see was there anything that we could be doing more holistically.
Yes, but do you accept what I've just put to you? I think you do, that so far as an inspection regime is concerned, this was not sufficient.
I completely accept it, yes.
Yeah, so why was it included in the new fire safety strategy?
Well, because at the moment it's the only thing that we've got to move forward with. I mean, I could have omitted it, but actually, I'm not sure that would have been right either, would it? I mean, just to reiterate, at this stage, I had no access to a maintenance programme. I recognised the need for it, I escalated the need for it, and I would keep escalating it and do what I could to get support or to find perhaps a way that we hadn't considered. But at the moment, this is all we've got, so I have to reflect it.
So do you also accept that this policy did not reflect the guidance in the LGA guide to the effect that there needed to be a 6-monthly inspection and maintenance regime?
I do.
Yes. And that in that respect, the TMO was and remained out of compliance with the RRO?
Yes.
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 Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient moment for a break?
Yes, we can have a break at that point. It's
I was a bit
convenient
early.
to you.
I keep breaking earlier. It's not
Yes,
going to
it's
become a
becoming
habit.
isn't it? It's, never mind, we won't hold it against you. Right, well, the clock's all saying something different. I'm going to say that we'll have a break until 3:30.
Okay.
And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very good. 3:30 then, please. Thank you. Yes, would you ask Ms. Wray to come back in, please?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Good, well done. Yes, Mr. Millett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Wray, just a few more questions on self-closing doors and problems with them. Excuse me. Do you remember a TMO handyman called Seamus Dunley?
Yes.
He gave a statement to the Metropolitan Police, and it is at MET 3019959. Can we look at that, please? That's his first page, and you can see that it's a statement dated the 6th of July 2018.
Yes.
And at page 6, he says, we just look at page 6. Yes, at page 6, you see, he says that the third paragraph, just after the warranty ran out, the doors started going wrong. They had internal door closers that were pulling out from the door because they had tiny little screws holding them in, and they had a massive fat spring inside. The door had a hole drilled into it, had an enclosed spring that went into the door and would have a chain which attached to the frame. The springs were quite big, and the screws that were holding them in were too small. Some of the screws were pulling out of the door, and some were pulling out of the frame. If it's coming out of the frame or the door, the chain goes round, and you can't shut the door. You can't reattach it because of the fixings, so I would have no alternative but to remove it. I think I did this to about 10 doors. One of the door closers that I took off, I showed to someone from management in my office. I can't remember who it was. It could have been Janice Wray or Claire Williams. I said that the closing mechanisms are far too much for the weight of the door. I think that the closers they were using were old stock because the casings were rusty. Not that this stopped it working. I got no response from management. After I showed them the door closers that had removed, not a thing. It was basically sort it out. Obviously, no one was going to come back to repair the doors, and I couldn't. So all I could do was remove the door closer. This now made that an illegal door because with the door closer pulled out, the door wouldn't self-shut. I said that to Claire Williams, Janice Wray, and I think I would have told Nicola. I've read that all to you. Do you remember speaking to Seamus Dunley about the door closers at Grenfell Tower, as he had suggested?
No.
You don't?
No.
Do you recall Carl Stokes raising any issue about Seamus Dunley removing door closers?
Yes, I do.
And what did he tell you?
That he had spoken to somebody when he was on the estate and been advised that Seamus had removed a number of door closers. I think it was, I can't remember the reason. I think it was to accommodate the resident for some reason. I don't know whether they find them heavy. I can't remember the detail, but I do remember being told.
Right. Let's look at a document. TMO 00859 and this is an email of the 17th of December, if we look at the bottom of page 1, from you to Siobhan Rumble, subject removing self-closers. Hi Siobhan, our fire risk assessor has raised his concern that in conversation with a few of the tenants at Grenfell Tower, they've advised that Seamus had disconnected the self-closers on their flat entrance door. In at least one of these cases, this was said to be due to the tenant perpetually locking himself out of his flat. It's imperative that these fire doors are self-closing, so I'd be grateful if you could please impress this upon Seamus and insist that he refrains from disconnecting or removing any other self-closing devices. And if you look up, she comes back to you on the 21st of December. We need to scroll up a little bit further. She says, told him, thanks. Do you recall this exchange?
I think so.
So you were aware of self-closing devices being removed by a TMO handyman, Seamus Dunley, at least in December 2015, even if not before that?
Yes. I'm pretty confident I would have followed that up with a phone call to Siobhan, asking if Seamus could tell us the numbers of the flats that he had disconnected the devices and asked her to get him to raise orders to reinstate or fit a replacement self-closer, but I don't suppose I put that in writing because I'm sure I would have spoken to her about his behaviour.
Right. So you did take steps to locate or identify the flats where Seamus Dunley had disconnected self-closers?
I'm sure that I asked for him to be interrogated.
Did you take any further steps to follow up and make sure that where Seamus Dunley had disconnected self-closers, the self-closing devices had been replaced and were working?
I don't recall if I did.
Why would you not have done?
Well, it's not a question of not have done, but I don't know.
Right.
It's 2015 and I
Yeah.
don't remember, sorry.
We don't see any documentation on this in the disclosure. So was it all done?
I
done.
would have spoken to Siobhan. I often found that it was better to speak to Siobhan than to put things in writing, so I would have asked her to speak to Seamus, get him to identify the flats, and then we could have raised repairs orders because it was possibly beyond the scope of the work that he could do as a handyman.
Did you take any action to discuss this matter either with him directly, Seamus Dunley, that is, or more widely with the other handymen or estate service assistants?
We didn't have any other handymen. He was the only one in the whole stock, and the estate service assistants didn't have tools and didn't undertake that kind of work. I would be confident that I would have spoken to him about it, and it would have been speaking, not right. So I wouldn't be able to demonstrate, unfortunately.
Right. And you don't know what Siobhan Rumble did next in response?
No, I don't.
I think, and I can't give you the reference while I stand here, but Siobhan Rumble said that she didn't take any action in relation to the door closers because she didn't know that they were, as it were, part of the fire regulations. Would you agree with that? Can you comment on it?
Well, it's sort of, I think I tried to explain in my initial email to her why it was crucial that he stopped doing it. So I'm sure I followed up.
Right.
But if that's her recollection.
Now, you'll recall the deficiency notice of the 17th of November 2016 in respect of Grenfell Tower. Let's just go back to it. TMO 00873 Here it is. And we saw your handwriting on this yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I think you had said that when we looked at this, the procedure for this, that before a notice was issued, it was procedure for the LFB fire safety team to call you up and ask for confirmation about the maintenance arrangements and to outline the breaches to you.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't always, but that was generally their practice.
Yeah. Now, we can see from the bottom of page 2 of this document, if you go to it, please, that the person who conducted the audit that had led to this deficiency notice was somebody called Michelle McHugh, Inspecting Officer Michelle McHugh. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Before she issued the notice, did Michelle McHugh call you and ask for confirmation about the maintenance arrangements? Do you remember?
I don't remember, I'm sorry.
You don't remember?
She was somebody that I dealt with, so it's possible that she did, but I'm not sure if it was in relation to Grenfell.
Now, if you go to pages 5 and 6, page 5 to start with, you can see that on that page, you can see that under these defects, the maintenance of the self-closing devices on entrance doors was referred to, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you remember having a discussion at all with Michelle McHugh about that?
No, I don't.
And if you look at page 5, you can see, and over to page 6, Article 17.1, if you look at the bottom of page 5, it says the protected route has been compromised by the fitting of doors that do not self-close. Top of page 6, flats 44 and 153 were checked at audit and did not self-close. Mm-hmm. So, see that? And then on page 6, under Article 14, at the time of the audit, the emergency routes or exits were inadequate. It was found that doors to flats 44 and 153 did not self-close. Under, well, it's right, isn't it, that Article 17.1 of the RRO is about ensuring that there is a suitable system of maintenance, yes?
Yeah.
Do you remember whether the LFB asked you about the maintenance arrangements for self-closing devices?
I don't recall that they did.
No. Do I take it from this that there was no prior discussion that you had, that you can recall, with Michelle McHugh about the breaches or deficiencies set out in this deficiency notice?
Not in this case, no. I don't have any recollection. I feel sure if she had phoned me, I would remember some of the conversation.
When you did get this deficiency notice, you presumably must have understood that an issue had been raised in respect of the system of maintenance for the flat entrance doors, yes?
Yes.
Yes. And this is late 2016. This is something that was in discussion with the joint management team, as we'd seen from earlier on in the year, yes?
Yes.
In the March of 2016, and also in September 2016 at the Health and Safety Committee meeting, yes?
Yes.
It must have come as some considerable disappointment and frustration to you to receive this document from the LFB, but not entirely unexpected.
No. It's frustrating that we knew there was an issue. We were trying to progress it, and the progressing it took longer and was more protracted than I would have wished.
Yeah. Now, if you go to page 1 again, we can see that you add annotations in February 17, Feb 17 there. Now, we know the notice was raised on the 17th of November 2016. Why were your notes or updates only added about 3 months later? Can you explain?
I can't explain. I can't explain, sorry. I've no idea.
Right.
With added updates, unless I transferred them across from something else on February 17. Sorry, I really don't know.
Right. Let's look in detail at one of the flats. That's flat 44, one of the two where the notice identifies the self-closers as not working. You cover this in your witness statement of the 21st of August 2020 at TMO 00873 934, page 20, paragraph 45. And you say in that paragraph there, the annotation I've made on this document is responsive repairs requested. See that?
Yes, sorry.
And then you go on to say, in the last part of the paragraph, I attach for information a screenshot from Capita, which shows that there is no record of a repair order being raised in relation to the door or self-closing device at flat 44. Was no repair raised because you yourself had failed to request the necessary repair?
Well, I can't see how I could have requested one for one of the flats and not for the other. That just beggars belief, really. So, no, I don't think so.
Right. Are you able to explain why you didn't request a repair to the door or the self-closing device for flat 44?
I find it... I don't believe I didn't request it.
Right.
There's absolutely no way that I would make a request for one flat when there are clearly two. I couldn't raise orders, so all I could do was request orders and provide the detail of what I needed to be raised. After that, it went off to other people elsewhere. Right. And then I could check the system for the order number and the status of the repair at a later date, although I usually got a colleague to help with that. So I cannot believe that I would have raised one and not the other, but I would have raised them as two separate requests so that they would have discrete numbers that I could track.
Yes, my previous question may have been a little bit unfair. Let me try it slightly differently. If, as it appears, as you say, you would have inevitably have requested a pair for both flat front door self-closers, can you explain why it didn't show up on the Capita spreadsheet, flat 44? No,
I can't. It's something I know nothing about, to be honest.
Right.
So there may be an explanation that I'm unaware of, but the repairs side of things, I didn't understand the software and I didn't need to, really. So, right. Sorry, I can't.
You didn't understand the software but didn't need to. In the light of that, would you agree that the error would probably not have occurred if you had used the W2 or CRM management systems to progress the deficiency notice items?
Actually, no, not necessarily. The problem seems to be with the repair system. I would have always had to request an order through the repair system. And at that time, it may well have been that I could have raised the request through CRM and then it went through to Capita. I don't know. It was kind of they worked in some sort of tandem, which I didn't really understand. The W2 system was never directly linked to the repairs ordering system, so it could have been recorded in W2, but it would still have had to have the action taken elsewhere.
Right.
So that I don't think that would have been foolproof.
But it might have come to your attention if a repair request had slipped through the net, if you had been using W2 or the CRM system to input requests for repairs.
Possibly it would.
Yes.
To be perfectly honest, I don't know why I didn't just put it all on a spreadsheet, but as I've said before, we did get so few until the last kind of probably post-Adair. There were some years we had no deficiency notices at all. There were some that we only had 2, and they may have raised 2 or 3 items. And so it wasn't on my radar as a big volume of work. I had my own kind of little system that I thought worked and had appeared to work. So I hadn't really thought that it was something that I should work towards.
Now, can we look at MET 3039807, page 79? What I'm going to show you is part of a report conducted by the BRE after the fire in February of 2018. I think this is a later version even of that. This is actually 2019. No matter. If you look at page 79 in that document, if you look at box 7, you can see that flat 44 is about halfway down there with red next to it, no. So door not in situ. But if you read across, you can see that the entry 4 from the right is door closer present, answer no, answer yes.
Yes.
Door closer type concealed, working door closer no. Door open or closed, open. Now, that was the finding according to BRE's survey. Assuming it to be accurate, would you agree that that suggests that if it's correct that on the night of the fire, the door had a non-functioning door closer, that it is at least possible that in the 7 months between the LFB identifying the non-working self-closing device and the Grenfell Tower fire, the self-closing device for flat 44 was never repaired?
It's possible, yes.
It is also possible that it was repaired and then was either broken or disconnected again.
Again, it's possible.
Yes, you don't know which it is.
I'm sorry, I can't know which it is now.
Now, as to flat 153, which was the second self-closing device identified by the 17th of November 2016 deficiency notice, you deal with that in your 21st of August 2020 statement at page 20, paragraph 45. That's TMO 008733934, page 20, paragraph 45. And there you say yes, in the second line, the open contractor spreadsheet refers to job number 2016313934 in respect to flat 153, raised on 26th of October 2016, with instructions, front door not locking properly, it is a multi-lock door, please attend to overhaul lock. And then you say the job is marked as being fully completed on 3rd November 2016. The Capita record confirms that this was reported by a resident via the telephone, which would indicate why the repair was raised before the NOD was received. Do you accept that job number 2016313934 was not done in response to the notice of deficiency because it predates the inspection by Michelle McHugh, which then gave rise to the deficiency notice? Her inspection was on the 27th of October 2016.
Right. that's the information that it says here is that it was reported by the resident.
Exactly.
So yeah, it wasn't generated by the deficiency notice.
Yes. Yes. And when you came to consider the deficiency notice, why did you understand the issue with the door and the locking mechanism to be the same issue that had been raised, that the door didn't self-close?
Well, I must have gone and spoken to somebody in the repairs team to find out more detail.
Yes. Who was that? Do you know?
Sorry, no.
Did you ask Adrian Bowman or an ESA to go and check the flat entrance door when you got the deficiency notice?
I don't recall doing so.
Why did you consider that the work done to the lock on flat 153 was an adequate response to the LFB's finding that the door did not self-close?
Well, as I say, I'm sure I would have spoken to somebody in repairs who would have checked the screen, advised me that there was already an order, and I have either made an assumption or they've been able to advise me that it was for both. I don't know. I can't really answer you any more fully than that.
At any rate, do you accept that you and your team failed to address the issue because the LFB raised the deficiency notice in respect to the door self-closer?
Well, if the residents raise the repair and it's in the repairs ordering system, whenever the fire brigade attend, then it's in the system. It's like we said, we probably can't ever be 100% compliant at all times. There will always be periods where things are being progressed but not completed.
And when you wrote in the... Yes, thank you. But I think you accept, as you've just done, that the repair was unrelated to the issues highlighted by the LFB and was raised at an earlier time by the resident.
That's what it says.
Yes, that's right. Now, Ms. Wray, you may or may not be glad to know that we've come to the end of a topic and are about to or could start a new one, but it's been a long day and it's been a long week. And I anticipate that you may be a little bit tired. That wouldn't normally be a good reason to stop, but the next topic may require a bit of further examination by me, and we won't finish it during the course of the day. We're well on track, Mr. Chairman, to finish Ms. Wray well within the scheduled time. And so I was going to suggest, and again, highly uncharacteristically for me, that we would call it a day at this stage.
Yeah, you're confident that if we finish early today, we will still finish Ms. Wray within the time that she's been asked to make available?
Absolutely we will. She's in fact been asked to be made available until the close of business on Wednesday. I'm completely confident that we will easily beat that target. We may even finish by close of business Tuesday, but I can't guarantee that.
Right. Well, I don't suppose you'd be averse to an early afternoon, Miss Wray, would you?
I wouldn't.
I suspect that goes for other people as well. All right, so in just a moment then we will call a halt for the day. Before we do that, I just need to mention one thing about arrangements for next week. As everyone will know, Monday the 14th of June is the 4th anniversary of the fire. The inquiry will not sit on that day out of respect for those who died and indeed the many others whose lives have been so badly affected by the tragedy. So we shall resume the hearing evidence on Tuesday, the 15th of June at 10 o'clock. So, Ms. Wray, I'm going to ask you now to come back and answer some more questions, but not until Tuesday. So you've got a slightly longer weekend in which I hope you can get a bit of rest. But please don't take the opportunity to talk to anyone about your evidence or anything to do with it. All right?
Okay.
So thank you very much, and we'll see you again on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much, Mr. Millett. Well then, as I've already explained, we shan't sit on Monday, and we adjourn till 10 o'clock on Tuesday.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.